2025 7A Connect Quarterly Update. I'm Bob Carpenter, and I will be your host today. First up, go to the next slide, Ross, and we'll introduce Diana Seaborn, Deputy Associate Administrator for OCA.
Thanks,
Diana?
Bob. I'm here. I guess we're not using cameras since we're remote, but hello everyone on the call. I think we have about 1,800 folks on the call, so it's good to know you're here, even though I can't see you and even though you can't see me. Welcome to the 7A Connect Quarterly Update as to what's going on right now at the SBA and CAP Access. And so one of my first and only duties in this participating conversation is to introduce the Director of the Office of Financial Assistance, and that is Daniel Pache. I know that some of you are very familiar with him. He comes to us from the Office of International Trade. I don't know, Dan, if you want to say hello to the group. There we go. There's Dan, and if Dan, if you want to log in and say hello, I'll stand down and move it forward to you, and then back to the team to continue with the most important data.
Thank you, Diana. So it's nice to be here with everybody. I'm very excited about the opportunity to join the Office of Financial Assistance. As Diana mentioned, I've been with the agency since 2021, working in international trade, focusing on working capital. Come to the SBA from the banking industry. I was 15 years as a lender and credit manager before that. So very excited to get into the discussion on the MARC program and look forward to connecting with everybody. And planning on being at some of the SBA lending conferences this summer with America East and Flagel. So look forward to connecting with you all, both here, online, and in person. I'll turn it over to our MC for the next section. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Good to have you on board here in OFA. And next up will be Ginger Allen, and she is our Chief of the 7A Loan Program Division and Loan Origination Division. Take it away, Ginger.
Hey, everybody. How's y'all doing? Thanks for coming out and thanks for hopping on early. We've got over 2,000 attendees, so that's great. If you can go to the next slide, I'm going to go over the agenda. First up is my team. We're going to go over a few hot topics, especially some questions that we're getting in the 7A Delegated Loan Apps box. And then we're going to introduce a new Manufacturers Access to Revolving Credit Loan Program, or MARC for short. After that will be Steve O'Leary with the Office of General Counsel. He'll talk a little bit about franchise and environmental updates since 5010-8. And then bringing it up in the end is the Fresno Commercial Loan Servicing Center to talk to you about the Unified Intake Platform. I've also been asked to do a reminder, everyone on the call who is involved in looking at loans in eTran, you should have all gotten at least one reminder email, probably more, reminding you that there's an annual certification to renew yourself in CLS, and this has got to be made no later than July 21st. If you have any questions about that renewal process, please send them to cls@sba.gov. I can't resist. I don't want to steal all of my team's thunder, but I do want to talk briefly about the MARC loan program. I'm pretty excited about it. You can think of it as basically being very similar to SBA Express, up to $5 million with a 75% guarantee and a requirement for an annual review of the borrower's financials. At that annual review, the lender will determine whether the line should continue to revolve or whether it should term out. Alternatively, the lines can just be term loans, so they don't have to be revolvers, although we anticipate most of them will. Additionally, you have the leeway if you want to add your own requirements on top of it. So for example, I was talking to a lender a couple of weeks ago. They said, look, we don't do the working capital cap line program because my institution only does quarterly borrowing based certificates. So when we roll this program out, if that institution wanted to, they could overlay their asset-based lending requirements on top of this MARC loan program. So again, this is not an asset-based lending program, but you can run it that way if you wish. The big question everyone is hopefully asking is, this sounds amazing. How soon can we start making these loans? And the answer is, we don't know. We're working with the Office of Management and Budget right now. And as soon as we have the date when we can start making these loans, we have a guide and a notice ready to publish. So could be soon. It could be as late as October 1st, which is, of course, the beginning of fiscal year 26. We just don't know yet. And so without further ado, I'll turn it over to my capable and talented team. Take it away, guys.
All right. First up, I believe, is Ross. So,
okay, thanks, Bob. Hey, everybody. We have fresh new content on SBA.gov. The updated servicing and liquidation matrix is available now. The training on demand page has new content. The topics we have posted now apply to all 7A loans. So it's really a good place to brush up on all the 7A requirements for 5010-8. Right now, we're working on content that dives deeper into the standard 7A, 7A small, and SBA Express loan programs. So this will come out soon, so be on the lookout for that. We're going to move on to 1502 reporting. So we have a modernized 1502 process. The reporting is going to be done in the My SBA loan portal. And we all know how important 1502 reporting is. So I'm sure most of you have already migrated, but if you haven't, please check out the FTA wiki page for instructions and reach out to 1502 at sba.gov for any questions. So coming up, this is my favorite topic. It's our 7A delegated loan apps inbox. So we opened this inbox on June the 1st. Within the past 45 days, we have received hundreds of messages in that inbox. So as far as turn times, we've been averaging less than 24 hours, and we're working to keep that pace up. We want the same thing that you guys do, and that's to provide our PLP lenders with an ultimate resolution to your request in a timely manner. So here we provided some things to include when making your request. So for an exceptional request, we need the names of the applicants and its principals, address of the project. Please include the loan amount and delivery method. For example, is it a standard 7A or 7A small express? Provide the specific SOP citation that you need the exception for. You can copy and paste it in your request along with a summary of facts as to why the exception can be granted. And when you receive an exception, please remember these are case specific. When an exception is granted, it may not be applied to other loan files. And just remember to keep a copy of the approval in the email in the loan file. So on to the questions. When a lender has a question on us, when a PLP lender has a question on a specific loan that needs to be addressed for the lender to approve the loan, the PLP lender sends the question along with the applicant information, loan amount, delivery method, and a short summary. So if you're not a PLP lender, or if the question is general and not for a specific loan, it's just policy, please send that to 7A questions at sba.gov. And up next, we have an example. So this has all the appropriate information wrapped up in a neat little package. So the lender here identified itself, provided the borrower's information, loan amount, delivery method, along with a brief narrative. So providing this information in the format will help you get that ultimate resolution that you need. It just makes things quicker. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Bob. Bob?
All right. Thanks, Ross. We've been getting some issues regarding lender preference lately, so we thought we'd just go over what is lender preference. It is defined in the regulation under 13 CFR section 12010, and it's also in the SOP 5010-8 and Appendix 3, which is our definitions section. So preference is, as defined, any arrangement giving the lender or a CDC a preferred position compared to SBA relating to making, servicing, or liquidation of a business loan with respect to things such as repayment ability or repayment of that loan, the collateral guarantees, control, maintenance of compensating balances, or purchases of CDs or acceptance of separate or companion loans without SBA's consent. So generally, these have to be done on a non-delegated basis. If you're providing any kind of a non-delegated loan and you submit it to the center will make that determination. PLP lenders and express lenders cannot provide any loan that gives any kind of a preference to themselves over SBA. Next slide, Ross. All right. Prohibition on preference is referenced also in the regulations under 13 CFR 120.410 and 125.36. And 411, talks about the agreement to participate under the Act, that is the lender's participation agreement, cannot establish any preferences in favor of the lender. The servicing and liquidation actions is covered under 536, and it says the lender cannot engage in any activity that creates a conflict of interest by the SBA lender unless it gets prior written consent of SBA to do that. SBA's SOP 5010-8 also prohibits 7A loans to be collateralized using a piggyback structure. So we'll run into that issue as well. Next slide, Ross. All right, piggybacking is when you have one or more lenders providing one or more loans to a single borrower at or about the same time, and this is defined as within 90 days of each other. It's financing the same or a similar purpose, and the 7A loan is secured with a junior lien position or no lien position compared to the collateral securing the non-7A loan. So that would be piggybacking when you're making a loan with an SBA loan and companion, and you're going to take a first lien on the real estate and leave the SBA loan secured with the business assets when you're financing whatever it is you're financing. But you can't just stick SBA with the lack of collateral and leave us there if you're securing it with something better. Next slide, Ross. All right. We do not consider piggybacking when both the 7A loan and the non-7A loan are made for working capital purposes. You have a term working capital loan for 7A and a non-7A line of credit you're providing the borrower, and that non-7A line of credit is secured by the working or trading assets. So you can have that line of credit secured by the receivables and inventory, and the 7A working capital loan secured by other assets. As long as it's that 7A loan has the business assets and the non-7A loan is line of credit is secured with those trading assets, the short-term trading assets, SBA does not consider that to be piggybacking. A shared lien position or pari passu, as long as the maturity of the non-7A loan is not shorter than the maturity of the SBA loan, we do not consider that to be piggybacking. If the maturity is shorter, even though it's a shared lien position, if the maturity is shorter on the non-SBA loan, it is still considered piggybacking and a preference to the lender. So you have to make the loan terms the same or longer for the non-7A loan. And one of borrower uses that 7A loan in conjunction with a USDA B&I loan, and they're financing a larger project, SBA and USDA have to be in a shared lien position with a similar maturity. B&I often requires they be in a first lien. That's okay as long as SBA is in a shared first lien. If SBA goes to a second lien, we're not okay with that. So just make sure you run into that issue. Changes of ownership, debt refinance. I believe we're running into Randy at this point.
We are. Thank you, Bob. All right. Thank you very much. So Ross said earlier, or talked about earlier, the 7A delegated loan apps inbox. And so we thought we'd take just a few slides to talk about some of the most common questions that we're getting in the inbox and clarify a few things, try to help with some of those common questions. And those common questions that we're getting most often, in fact, the month of June, both debt refinance and changes of ownership were the top two topics for the inbox by debt refinance, actually by a really wide margin. So we're going to talk about those today and hopefully clarify a few of the questions that we're seeing most often. So this first slide is both changes of ownership and debt refinance. And so what we mean by that is that there's been some questions that have been overlapping or where there's been some confusion between the two. So this first one is we want to clarify that paying off debt as part of a change of ownership is not a refinance of debt. And some of you may be saying, well, yeah, we know it's in the SOP, but we're getting a lot of these questions. That's why it's the first on the list about this, because there's some confusion about it. So the example listed there is like if I'm buying a business and the seller uses the funds to pay off debt, the seller's loans that they had previously. That's not a debt refinance. That's part of the change of ownership. So we wanted to make that clear here. And then and this is for complete changes of ownership, the previous owner's debt needs to be paid off or must be paid off as part of the change of ownership. And the option to assume the existing SBA debt needs to be offered, at least offered to the buyer. So those two are the most common that we were seeing between both changes of ownership and debt. So the next few slides, go ahead and go to the next slide, are going to be focused more specifically on debt refinance and change of ownership itself. And so for this one, just debt refinance, the most common question that we were seeing is reasonable terms, which makes sense because in previous SOPs, that language wasn't there, and it is now in SOP 5010-8. It's actually back, and so there have been a lot of questions from people about, well, is this on reasonable terms, or and they're presenting scenarios about the actual loans themselves and whether they are on reasonable terms. And so we're going to clarify here as best we can what that means. And so it's the lender's responsibility to determine this and to have that in the credit memo. And so there's three main areas that can help in making sure that you're evaluating whether or not it's on reasonable terms. And so that first one is why the current SBA loan is no longer appropriate for the borrower. And then demonstrate the 10% improvement to installment payment amount. And then explain how that benefits the business by increasing the cash flow of the business. So these three items really do need to be present in the credit memo and discussed. And so it's not always black and white. That's why it's up for the lender to really look at the details of the loan request and try to address these items as well as others related to that. This last point is one we got quite a bit related to reasonable terms as well. Does the 10% improvement alone satisfy the requirement to determine that? And the answer to that question is no. That just satisfying the 10% improvement alone is not sufficient to state that it's the previous loan is on unreasonable terms, or is on reasonable terms, the new loan. So next slide. And also a very common one, and again, this makes sense because we were previously, it was previously able to do debt refinance for merchant cash advances and factoring, but that is not eligible any longer. So it is really important to share this and communicate this to all of you out there that there's some creativity and some questions about this that are coming in about trying to get these refinanced. And there's also been where lenders will submit documents or information related to agreements to have us review, and we're not doing that. We're not going to review agreements from in those situations. It's up to the lender, and if it's required to get legal counsel to help review those to determine that, but it is really up to the lender to determine whether they're merchant cash advances or factoring agreements. And if they are not eligible.
So, Randy, this is Diana. I want to just be clear on this for everyone, that an MCA is not considered debt in the same way that a note that you're refinancing. And the experience we had, just for everybody's information, is that those merchant cash advances that were being refinanced over that short period of time where they were authorized are largely going back to the MCA well the minute they get the funding from the lender and getting back into the same position they were in before. What this tells me is this is a business that's struggling, doesn't have enough capital to operate, may not have enough revenues. And what a lender should be doing in this case is looking at the viability of the business when they look at refinancing any debt, particularly this kind of high interest rate, short-term obligations that indicate that a business is in trouble. Yes, the SBA's program is always going to provide a longer term and a lower rate, but beyond that instant gratification, you need to consider as a lender, as I would as a lender, why is this business here in this place right now, and what's going to happen subsequent to this loan? Because they're going back to that MCA and doing the same thing over again. And now they have a second tier of debt. The SBA responsibility to the lender and merchant cash advancers are factoring agreements as well. So this is not good for our program. It's probably not good for the borrower as well to take on additional debt if they're struggling in that way. So, this was reinstated as a prohibition specifically as a result of the behavior of the portfolio and the performance of the loans when these came into the portfolio. This contributed to the reason that we had to reinstate fees in a mid-year situation, which we haven't done in many, many years, and we don't do lightly. So just so everyone knows, no to MCA, period. I think if you're a regulated institution or federal or credit union, state regulated, that what a merchant cash advance is, look at the agreements, look at the terms, and the same thing for factoring. I don't think that there are many.
Actually, Diana, we do get quite a few requests from lenders asking us to review the documents to decide whether it's merchant cash advance or factoring.
Do these come from non-regulated lenders or regulated lenders?
We can go over the list afterwards, okay. But just folks seem to be uncomfortable, and we do not review those documents, and it is up to the lender to determine whether that debt is an eligible loan with a note that can be refinanced or whether it's not. And it should be pretty apparent, and if not, then you can go to your internal counsel for that.
Or your credit team. I mean, if a lender at the SBA level doesn't understand and can't make the distinction based on the documents, then I would go to your credit team or your risk management team and ask them to take a look at it with regard to identifying, the credit. Steve, did you have something to contribute, or did I just not see what you? It looked to me like you unmuted yourself, so I didn't know if counsel had anything to say from our side.
No, it was just an accident, so no.
Thanks, Randy. Go ahead.
We did just get a question saying, when will SBA allow MCA eligibility again? And the answer is we're not. We don't intend to allow it again. Okay.
Great. Thank you both, Diana and Ginger. That's a great discussion and very clear. So we'll move on to the next one. Lenders with PLP. This is also going to seem like, why are we bringing it up on this call? But we're getting a lot of these questions, so it's important, and we're not going to put them on here arbitrarily. We really went through all of the questions to see what we were getting the most of, and so this one is one we were getting quite a bit as well. So we're just going to clarify because some of the questions that were coming in. Are still coming in related to, well, can we still process this general processing, and just being very clear, if you have PLP authority for standard 7A and 7A small loans, they need to be processed under your PLP authority. And the only exception to that is refinancing the lender's same institution debt. So I know that's out there, but just want to make that very clear because we're still getting questions about that.
Right. And then, Randy, to be on, I'm sorry for interrupting, but these things are pretty important, because we want to be able to be as responsive, as immediately responsive as possible on these delegated mailbox requests from PLP lenders. And that is, sending it through the center will not get you a different answer. You are speaking directly to the people who write the policy, right? That is Ginger's team and Randy and Bob Carpenter, with the help of counsel, and also Ross. Don't let me leave him out of there. But the point is this: you're not going to get a different answer by processing it non-delegated. It's a lender's decision to do. We want to support you. If you're not getting the support you think you need in these answers, then please, weigh in and let us know. But these are the people who write the policy. What they say you can take to the bank. And sending anything through the center in order to avoid asking the question is not going to result in a different answer. We track these answers, we track the source, and the center knows, with regard to seeing a deal from a delegated lender, that it doesn't, the system won't even submit it to R1 status through the center. So please help us make this good for you. Ask clear questions, be very specific about your need, and if you feel like you're not getting timely responses, let us know, because we're walking into this along with you, and if we need additional resources, that's fine. But you have to understand that this is not the 7A questions box. This is the source of your policy for the program. And so what they say in this response is the right, correct answer, and what SBA is responsible for and what the lender's responsible for. Thanks, Randy.
No, thank you, Diane. And I appreciate the comments too, actually, because we really do try hard to evaluate everything that we can. We have discussions about things. We're very open and communicative, all of us, in striving to get to the very best and accurate answer. There's a lot of work that goes into that. So just know that we're very cognizant of that. So this next one on this slide is that debt reflected on the applicant's business balance sheet is eligible, and there's an if there. So we've been getting questions about, well, it shows up on the business balance sheet, so it should be eligible, or is it eligible? And yes, it is if that debt is also reflected on the applicant's business tax returns, showing the interest expense that's associated with that debt. So that is a caveat that's really important to recognize. If they haven't, that's not showing up on their tax return and the interest isn't showing up, but it shows on the balance sheets, or maybe doesn't because there's a private agreement between, parties, it's not eligible. So it needs to show up and be accounted for on the tax return as interest expense. Next slide. Okay, so there's, with debt refinance, there's been an E-Tran validation error based on the SBA maximum guarantee amount. I think a lot of you have been running into this. And so we're just providing the information here for a workaround. That the error that will pop up is the aggregate SBA loan requested amount or amounts exceeds the maximum amount. And that's the message that you're getting. So if you're getting that, right now the workaround on that is to click on the validate button and correct the errors listed. And then depending on the amount that exceeds the total, you may be able to clear the aggregate error by lowering the guarantee percentage. And then the lowest the lender can input is 1% for approvals, and that's after February 2025. And then for approvals that were before that date of February 2025, it'll require manual developer intervention to update the guarantee fee. And that happens on the back end. So, and then when all the errors have been corrected, you can click submit, and then the compliance review is passed, and the SBA loan number should be issued after that. Hopefully that is helpful to some folks out there. Next slide is just focused on changes of ownership. So we've had the discussion on just debt refinance, and now this just focused on changes of ownership. So these are questions that we're getting a lot specifically to changes of ownership. The first one is that multi-step partial changes of ownership are not eligible. We're seeing some creative questions come in and regarding organizational structure, if we can do this or that. Well, if we maybe change this around and then make the owner or the business type, different name. Is that eligible? And that's just a multi-step partial change of ownership, and those are no longer eligible. We wanted to make that clear. For business expansion, we recognize that there's some nuances to this, and so each circumstance is going to be very individual, and it's important for lenders to understand that and to really look at the circumstances of the situation of the business and all of that. But the parameters for business expansion are clear. So the elements of a business expansion to be eligible as a business expansion versus a change of ownership is that an existing business starts or acquires a business that is in the same 6-digit NAICS code with identical ownership and in the same geographic area as the acquiring entity, and they are co-borrowers. So all of those elements need to be present for it to be considered a business expansion. So then the next question usually follows, well, what is the same geographic area? And that is in the SOP, and it means the new business is located within a reasonable distance of the subject business, and the management can exercise similar daily control over both locations. And then the question that usually follows that is, what does that mean? And so similar daily control, it means what it says, and that is that if it's 3 or 4 hours away and the business management is unable to get to the other location and get back to the other location within the same day, that is not similar daily control and would not be eligible under business expansion. So another way to look at that is if you close the business down for that particular day or week, where would the customers go? Would they go to the next location that they're purchasing, or are they going to go to some other competitor that's closer by? So there have also been scenarios where the distance between, people ask a lot of questions about miles and the distance, and it depends. So that's why it's very important to look at each individual circumstance, because if there's certain towns that might be a little further away from another town, but to get there may take an hour and a half based on the distance. And traveling the same distance in another area might take you 4 or 5 hours. So it just depends on the circumstances, and each one needs to be treated as such. So we wanted to try to make that clear, and also let you know that we're looking at that to try to help clarify that further in the future. So the next one is that equity requirements are specific to each type of change of ownership. So we've seen where there's a lot of crossing over between a complete change of ownership or partner buyout or partial change of ownership or the business expansion. There's a lot of wires getting crossed about what specific eligibility requirements are for equity. And so we just encourage you to review the equity requirements in the SOP when you're looking at a particular loan request, and identify if that loan request, what it is. Is it a partial change of ownership, complete change of ownership, partner buyout? And then review the equity requirements, and it should be clear to you. And if not, feel free to ask those questions, but we are seeing where there's a lot of application of one to another. And then SBA does not require the selling owner that's providing a 2-year guarantee to provide their assets in case of a collateral shortfall. I know that's the language directly from the SOP, but we put that in there just because we're still getting a lot of questions about that. And then changes of ownership for existing SBA loans. This one we put in there for servicing request, and we've got our servicing folks on the call today, so it might help address some of these questions if they come up. But there are examples of changes of ownership questions that we're getting where they're stating that they lowered an individual's ownership, or they changed the ownership structure, and they're looking to try to do a debt refinance. And the change of ownership was happening behind the scenes and not communicated to the lender, or it hasn't been received SBA approval. That can't happen. So it's really important that if you're going to do a change of ownership, that you follow the change of ownership requirements outlined in the SOP during that process, or if you're going to do a change of ownership, you have to follow the existing SBA loan procedures outlined for servicing requests to do a change of ownership prior to doing another type of transaction, debt refinance or whatever it might be. But that does need to happen and follow the procedures outlined in SOP 5057 3.1. Next slide. Okay, here we go. We are jumping full on into the 7A manufacturer's access to revolving credit, or MARC loan. You've heard about it. Dan mentioned it. Ginger's mentioned it. We're excited about it. We're not sure, as Ginger stated, when it's going to be launched, but we are excited that we have the opportunity and the approval to be able to talk about it with you today. So Ginger did a good job earlier of providing a summary of the information for this. So I'm not going to go over that on this slide, but just want you to know that what we've done here on this particular slide is given very basic, high-level view of the program summary itself, and then also the summary of terms and conditions. So it'll be a really, hopefully, a great resource for you to look at, just in a snapshot of the program itself. But just want to reiterate something that was also mentioned by Ginger, is that it's a new 7A loan delivery method, and it's kind of a blend between a standard 7A term and SBA Express loan. But we want to make it very clear that the MARC loan, being a new delivery method, is not a cap line or an asset loan, as Ginger mentioned, or a modification of either the existing 7A working capital cap line or SBA Express. So it's very important that you all know that. So again, in the next few slides, we're going to be going over more detail about the program, so I won't touch on that here. So next slide. So starting out with some of the detail is the uses of proceeds. So what can you use the proceeds for a MARC loan? And the primary main uses of proceeds for this loan is only to be used for short-term working capital needs. And with that, they can use the line, if it's a line of credit, use the line to make loan payments that are past due. And that actually includes the 7A MARC loan payments. So what can you not use the MARC loan for? And that is debt refinance, changes of ownership. Now, the change of ownership, although you can't use it for a MARC loan, it can be done in conjunction with a change of ownership loan. It just can't use the funds or the use of proceeds for a MARC loan for a change of ownership. And then it can't be used to pay delinquent withholding taxes or similar funds held in trust, and then floor plan financing. So making that clear. And then one thing I forgot to mention on the previous slide, could we jump back to that, Ross, real quick? I just want to point out something on the program summary here. What's going to be coming out to provide some of the details that we're talking about today is actually a new appendix to the SOP. It'll be Appendix 13. And it'll be titled 7A Manufacturers Access to Revolving Credit, MARC, and that will be included in the SOP 5010-8 coming out. So that's where you'll see more of the details that we'll be discussing today. Thank you, Rob.
And Randy, if I can clarify, when we actually publish a new SOP, as we think we will, within the next, say, 6-8 months, that's going to be primarily focused on the 504 loan program and the new edition of the SOP. But that's when we'll have a whole new chapter in Section B of the SOP, and it will no longer be an appendix then. It'll actually have its own chapter, and we'll probably situate it after SBA Express and before cap lines. That's just my best guess at this time, how we'll handle it.
Great. Thank you, Ginger. All right, that is it for me. I'm going to turn it now over to my colleague. Take it away.
Thank you, Randy.
Yeah.
So for Mark loan, for the terms and conditions, they may be term or revolving. Term loans can be sold on the secondary market where revolving loans may not. The borrowers have the option to pay down the RLOC at any time. After it's paid down, if needed, the lender can disperse additional funds up to the approval amount. We're going to move on to disbursements. So it's a lender's discretion to decide whether or not to control the disbursements. And this can include capping the disbursement lower than the loan amount. Lenders may request an increase if the annual review supports the increase. It's never to exceed the statutory limit of $5 million. Additional controls can be placed over the disbursements, provided the lender has obtained consent from the borrower. The maximum loan amount for a Mark loan is $5 million. We just said that, but the maximum guarantee percentages, they follow the same procedural requirements as standard 7A and 7A small, which is 75 and 85%. Term loans may not exceed 10 years. Revolving loans can go up to 20 years. Loans over 12 months must have a term out period at least as long as the draw period, which means they can't revolve for more than 10 years. And we're going to segue over to debt service. Debt service coverage must be equal to or greater than 1-to-1 based on historical financials, or if they're relying on projections, it must be the same 1-to-1 within 2 years of loan funding or the end of construction. So if you're relying on projections, the global debt service must be at least 1-to-1. If you're using projections to meet debt service, the applicant must provide a monthly cash flow analysis for 12 months and a current schedule of debts. We're going to move on to equity for Mark loans. For equity, the lender must determine there's sufficient invested equity based on the type of business, experience, and competition. So they got to include in the credit memo a detailed discussion of the equity position and any lender required equity injection. And with that, I'm going to move it over to Mr. Carpenter.
All right. Thanks, Ross. Next slide. Oh, that's still you, Ross, I think.
Oh, sorry about that. So collateral decisions on what collateral must be taken are based on the individual loan. So at a minimum, the lender must take a lien on all business assets. This is a little bit different. So a lien must be taken on all business assets except for vehicles that are already encumbered by a lien unless the value is greater than $20,000 at the issuance of the SBA loan number. So the lender has discretion whether or not to take an interest in the trading assets or to leave those assets available to pledge as collateral for a line of credit. And now I'll turn it over to Bob.
All right. Thanks, Ross. We're back on track. All right. For fees on the Mark loans, generally, the concept of fees is pretty much the same as in the SOP 5010-8. However, for Mark loans that are provided as a revolving line of credit, the lender may charge a fee of 50 basis points based on the outstanding balance of the Mark loan at the time of the annual review. And if there is, at the end of the first year, you're not required to do an annual review, but you can still charge a 50 basis point fee based on the outstanding balance of that Mark revolving line of credit at the time 1 year after the initial disbursement. So you can do that, and then you'll have to do the annual review after that. So let's go to the next slide. And these are part of the post-closing requirements, is that you as the lender have to conduct an annual review of the business financials for the trailing 12 months to determine whether you're going to renew on a 1-year basis that revolving line nature of the Mark loan, or if you're going to have to term out that loan, and if the term out is appropriate. So the lender has to use their factors that are consistent with their similarly sized non-SBA guaranteed commercial lines of credit. And those lenders that do not make similarly sized non-SBA guaranteed loans, talking to you SBLCs, you have to use prudent lending standards. The analysis has to assume the full use of the mark line. So if you make a mark line when you're doing your analysis, if you make a mark revolving line of credit for $2 million, but the balance at the time you're doing your analysis is only $1 million, you can charge the fee against the $1 million, but you have to do your analysis on repayment ability, adequacy, and so on based on the $2 million full balance if it were to be fully drawn. And you also have to do an owner and guarantor analysis on that report. Next slide. And part of these post-closing document requirements, you have to document your file, and your lender's analysis has to include the documentation supporting that debt service coverage for 1-to-1 for the full debt service of the business. But when you're calculating the mark loan portion of the business debt service, you would only be based on the interest-only payments on that mark revolving line of credit, not the full if it were to be termed out or whatever, in P&I payments. So you're only looking at the interest-only payments on the calculation for repayment ability and debt service coverage for a revolver in your annual report. No bankruptcy filings can be against the company. You have to have evidence that there's no bankruptcy filings. Just document your file in your report. And the borrower has to be current. That is based on the definition of current for mark loan annual reviews versus current as used in the SOP. That's slightly different. I believe it's 60 days as opposed to the 29 days. And you have to maintain sufficient collateral coverage, so you would have to address that. And if there are no annual review requirements for any of the mark term loans, so once you convert a revolver to a term loan, you are no longer required to prepare an annual review for that particular line. Next slide. A lender can term out a mark revolving line of credit at any time if they deem it necessary. You don't have to wait till you finish your report. If you see the borrower is having problems, you can then just step in and term that line out and help them by giving them a 10-year repayment ability on that loan, 10-year term out. If the mark revolving line of credit does not meet the requirements that we went over in the previous slide, then you have to term it out. So if they've got a bankruptcy filing or they don't meet the 1-to-1 collateral or the 1-to-1 debt service coverage, then you must term the loan out. And no further disbursements on the line can be made after the loan converts to a term loan. And loan proceeds, if the lender determines that any loan proceeds were used to acquire any fixed assets, this is a working capital loan, the lender must refinance that portion of the mark loan used to purchase fixed assets into another loan. And you may use an SBA 7A loan to do that. So if they buy equipment using that loan and you find out about it, you have to immediately, as soon as you can, refinance that equipment portion into a term loan and move it over to another regular 7A, whether you use Express 7A standard 7A or 7A small. It's up to you at that point, or you do it on your own. Next slide. Servicing options for servicing these loans. Lenders will follow the SOP 5057 and the Servicing and Liquidation Action 7A lender matrix. So we've got links for both of those here so you can get access to that. If the borrower becomes delinquent on the loan, and to help that borrower remain current or regain currency, in SOP 5057, lenders may extend that loan maturity up to an additional 10 years. So from the point they extend it, they can add 10 years to it. So if you're coming in and they had a term loan and it was, you have 4 years left on it, you can come in and extend it to 10 years. So you go from 4 years to 10 years, and hopefully that reduced payment will assist the borrower in getting back on their feet. But you have to follow the procedures in the 5057 to do that, including, does it make sense to do it, or is it time to fish or cut bait?
Hey, Bob, can I interject here? We're getting a bunch of questions asking about Mark loan and how it affects the maximum $3.75 million in dollars guaranteed. Mark loan is a regular 7A loan, just like a standard 7A loan or 7A small, SBA Express. So any 7A loan and any 504 loan counts toward the maximum $3.75 million in outstanding dollars guaranteed. Okay, it all aggregates. All right, thanks, Bob.
Yeah, so if you're making a Mark line of credit to your borrower at the same time they're getting a loan to buy real estate through a 504, you may want to make sure you get that Mark loan approved before you get the 504 loan, because the 504 loan may impact the guarantee portion available to that particular borrower. So make sure you always get the approval on the 7A loan before the 504 loan. 504 can go much larger in guarantee size than the 7A loan. We're capped at 3.75 unless it's an international trade loan. Then we can go up to 4 million for working capital and 4.5 million. But as 504 loans can go up to the full 5 million and even 5.5 million for, I think, even 6.5 million in some cases. But and they have unlimited numbers of loans for energy public policy and things like that. So you'd have to talk to your CDCs about that. Lenders can defer the payments on these once they've been termed out. So if you have a revolving loan, you can defer the payments up to 6 months. But if a term loan and you have sold that guarantee portion of that term loan on the secondary market, you're capped at 3 months until, or you can go further if you get investor approval to provide a longer deferment. So you can do a deferment. If it's a revolver, it can't be sold on the secondary market, so you can go to 6 months. If it's a term loan and you've sold it on the secondary market, it's 3 months subject to the investor approval. All right, next slide. All right, here's some of our upcoming dates for our 7A Connect quarterly update. For 7A, we only have one more this year in October. 504 has 2 more, September and December, and we'll kick these off again next January for the 2026 updates. Next slide, and you'll have the resources available. These are the links that they all work. If you need SOP links, the matrix links, so on, district office links. Next slide is our program points of contact for 7A. And the next slide after that is a continuation of those. And the next slide after that is a continuation of those as well. So these are all available working links. These will be posted once we share this recording. You will have the available, the slide deck posted as well. And all of these links will work with the downloaded slide deck once you download it. Next slide is our OCA program newsletter, and you can forward this link, and this red arrow points to the small little hyperlinks that are available at the bottom of our emails, and you can forward those, and all of those links will continue to work. If you have somebody who wants to get onto our newsletters and to subscribe or unsubscribe on any of these newsletters, just forward the emails you receive, and they can submit them that way. And the next few slides are our QR codes for access to our Office of Capital Access, and the OCA 7A Loan Program newsletter, and the 7A Working Capital Pilot newsletter that's out there, and our Training on Demand page. So now we're going to kick it off to our legal counsel, Chief Franchise Counsel and Office of General Counsel, Steve O'Lear. So take it away, Steve.
Great. Thanks so much, Bob. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of updates on the franchise, what's happening with the franchise directory and the franchise world. So I added a lot of extra slides just kind of as for content. So I may skip through them just so we don't take a lot of time to go through all of it. But I wanted to hit some of the highlights. So as you all know, the franchise directory came back. It was effective June the 1st with the new SOP. I just wanted to give you some stats as to what's happening. So obviously we were down for 2 years, and it is a very popular program, and we have had lots of interest in brands getting on there. Currently, right now, we've added 196 new brands to the directory, and we've processed over 1,000 transitions from using addendums to not using addendums of existing brands. So that's kind of where we are now. Our volume is really heavy. It is starting to slow down. We were averaging about 150 to 180 emails a day at the beginning of this. We've gotten it down now to maybe about 60 emails a day, which is much, much better. And a lot of those emails are a lot of duplicates. So first of all, thank you all for your patience as we're working through this. I know we get a lot of questions about turn times, and clearly our turn times are a little out of sync just because of the extreme volume that we have, but we are processing them as quickly as possible, and we are trying to deal with lenders that have expedited requests. So we are trying to manage all of that. But just the good news is we're starting to see it in a more manageable place right now. So I just wanted to give you that update. But we have added close to 200 new brands on the directory in a very short period of 2 months. So that's really good. So can we go to the next slide? So just want to give you an idea again of what we're doing here. We are reviewing agreements that meet the definition, or we're reviewing any kind of commercial type agreement, franchise, license, jobber, or similar agreements. We're running them through the definition of what's a franchise FTC definition, and if it meets that definition, we're listing it on the directory like we did in the past. We're also listing non-FTC brands on the directory as well, just like we were doing in the past. So the process is exactly the same. We are reviewing agreements to determine if the brand represented an eligible business model. So we are looking at eligibility, and if the brand is an eligible business model and it meets the FTC definition, then it gets listed. And then we're looking also at any potential restrictions or anything that the agreement requires that may impact your ability to secure any of the assets with collateral. So we look at both of those issues in determining whether or not we should list the brand. Next slide. So again, the directory exists. We'll talk a little bit about how the format changed just in the next slide, but pretty much it's back at the same place where it was. We determine if the brand meets the FTC definition. If it does, it gets listed. We provide the franchise identifier code. If it's a FTC franchise, if the brand is not an FTC franchise, we'll list it, but not provide the code. One of the questions we get a lot of recently is, and it deals with the note section. So the note section is for the lending community. We put that specifically in there to help you all to see what the issues that we saw in the agreement that could be problematic. But we also used the note section to identify brands that were listed that had certain restrictions in use from our programs. And as you know, we've rolled out over the past couple of years a number of different programs, one of them being PPP. And we had some different eligibility requirements for PPP. So you will see brands listed on there that say eligible for PPP loans only. And so that two things would have happened with those brands. One, they may have come in during the PPP rush and asked for an expedited review and not a full review. And we may have agreed to that and put them on there and told them that if they wanted to come back after the fact and get a full review, we would look at it for all loan programs. So there are a number of brands on there that are PPP only, and they may not be brands that are not eligible. It's just that we did not do the full review and they did not come back to us again. So we have been looking at some of those and turning them around to make them eligible for all programs. So if you do see a brand like that, you may want to ask the franchisor to provide their current FDD, and we'll take another look at it. Also, we have brands on there that are for EIDL loans. And again, EIDL has different eligibility requirements than 7A and 504. So some of the passive type franchise businesses would be eligible for the EIDL program, but would not be eligible for the 504 or the 7A. So that's why those notes on those brands. We have been getting quite a bit of questions on those. So I just wanted to kind of point that out a little bit to make it a little bit clearer. Next slide. So we did make a pretty substantial change to the model of our directory, which we hope really will improve the process for everyone. We've moved from a certification model or a addendum model to a certification model. So going forward, once we've converted existing brands over, we will no longer require a addendum brand to brand for each specific loan that you make. Once a franchisor has provided a certification, and this is an existing franchisor, the directory currently, and we get a lot of questions on this, so I kind of want to spend just a little moment on this. The way the current directory is published right now, you're going to see a column in there that says franchisor certification. If there is a Y in that column, then we are then taking away the Ys in all the other columns, meaning is there an addendum required? Is it the standard addendum or the negotiated? We're just completely taking it away. So a certification, a yes in a certification column means that franchisor has submitted a certification and you're good to go. You don't need any addendums. We keep getting the questions of people saying, can you put an N in those boxes? And the reason we're not putting N's in those boxes at the moment is those boxes will eventually go away once we've converted everybody over. So I just wanted you to be aware that if there is a Y in the certification column, you're good to go. You no longer need to use an addendum at all. In terms of the brands that come on, the newer brands that come on, they will come on with a certification. And so again, they will have a Y in the certification. So just to be really clear, if there is a Y in the certification column, you are good to go on that loan and you don't need any addendums. Secondly, if there isn't a Y, but there is, the brand is listed and requires an addendum, then you currently will need to continue to use that addendum until that brand has been converted over. So just wanted to clarify that's our process, and we're in a transitory process now until we convert all of the other brands over, or as many as want to be converted over. And we are finding very interestingly that a lot of brands have modified or changed some of their names around, and so sometimes you'll see a brand listed on there with maybe 2 or 3 different names because they've changed their name, and as a result we're trying to keep the old name and the new name so it doesn't confuse everyone, and so you will see some of that where there are more than one franchise brand name on there in the directory. And one of the issues that we are having is that a lot of franchisors are not completing the certification correctly with the brand name. So we're going back and forth to clarify that. But we are making a lot of progress. I've reached out to a lot of the franchisors communities, and we're getting that process straightened out a little bit. Next slide. So I just described that interim process. So I'll have you go to the next slide as well. Okay, for all new brands, again, being on the directory, they will submit those and they will just have a certification. So a lot of new brands won't even deal with the addendum. Next slide. The eligibility, we're still looking at the same eligibility. We haven't changed any of that, just so you guys are aware of some of the potential issues we have with some franchise brands. We have those passive models, the cleaning models that are on there. And again, some of those cleaning models were eligible for PPP, but they are not eligible for 504 and 7A. We still have our salon suite models, again, that are not eligible for 504, 7A. There are passive type relationships. We're still dealing with illegal activities, the marijuana-based businesses, CBD products, things along those lines. Businesses that restrict patronage, we do have some of those issues. Speculative businesses as well. And the one that we've seen quite often, and I guess that really goes under the discriminatory maybe or restricting patronage, is the salons or gyms or gender-based businesses, and that's still that requirement of providing some information to determine that a brand is not restricting. And we do have a number of brands on there that may seem to relate more to one gender, but we are basically putting that same note on there that says as long as the lender provides documentation that they are open to both men and women, then they're still eligible. So that requirement is still in place. Next slide. Franchise codes, the franchise codes are there. You do need to provide the franchise code when you make a loan into E-Tran, so you do need to use those codes. Those codes are updated on a regular basis. One of the questions we get a lot is how often are we updating the directory? We are trying to do it weekly. We've pretty much done it. There will be one coming out either today or tomorrow. It's in now. It's in the system for an update. So we do have an update that should be out today. We're trying to put them in on a Friday and hopefully get them published on a Monday. And that's where we're trying. That's our goal going forward, is to try to do that. Next slide. We've gotten a couple of questions on franchisor applicants, and I just wanted to spend just a couple of minutes on this. So as some of you may know, again, we always had a problem. We always looked at franchises in the lens of affiliation, and we don't do that any longer. So because of the affiliation reg changes, we're not necessarily looking at affiliation between a franchisor and a franchisee. We're looking at the eligibility of that franchise brand. So when it comes to whether or not a franchisor itself may be eligible, we used to have a problem in the past because franchisors, because of our affiliation regs, most franchise agreements between a franchisor and a franchisee created affiliation, which created a size problem, because if a franchisor came in for a loan application, we would automatically affiliate all of their franchisees with their franchisors unless there was an addendum in place for each specific franchisee, which in most cases did not exist. And so we created a number of years ago this global type addendum that we use for franchisors, and that basically solved the problem. But that problem's gone completely away now. So we're not looking at affiliation anymore. So if a franchisor applicant comes in, the three things that you need to look at is the brand listed on the directory, because that would determine that the brand presents an eligible business model. Secondly, does the franchisor on its own meet size requirements? So again, you're still going to consider the royalty fees that a franchisor would get, but you're not looking at basically all of the sales of its franchisees. And then is the applicant itself, meaning the franchisor applicant itself, eligible under all SBA regulations? So we've gotten a number of those questions. A franchisor, we've determined, is an eligible applicant, but a master franchisor or a sub franchisor is not, and we've gotten that question a lot, and that really is those cleaning models or some of those other ones that we've determined are not eligible. Next slide. Great. I just want to spend another minute or two just going over a couple of environmental policies. If you go to the next slide. So again, I'm sure everyone knows this, and I guess this really impacts the 504 loan program more so than the 7A. We've made a substantial change in how we look at environmental reviews, or how we process environmental reviews under a non-delegated processing of 7A and non-delegated 504. So it really impacted more on the 504 side than the 7A. But just again, remember that if it's a delegated loan or a non-delegated loan, the environmental process is now delegated to the lender, and the lender needs to either self-certify the environmental review, if it's a clean review, and if it's not a clean environmental, then it needs to be sent to SBA for review. Next slide. So again, if an environmental investigation report concludes that a property has no contamination, and in the next slide we define contamination, it's the SBA's lender's responsibility to certify in E-Tran that the property is not contaminated. And here's our definition. So contamination means the presence of any hazardous substance at or affecting the property, including any hazardous substances that it might have migrated to or from the property in such quantities or under such conditions as to render the property or the operations conducted therein subject to or potentially subject to a directive from a government order or government entity. And it's that potential subject to that sometimes has become a problem. So again, we understand that this was a fairly big change in how we look at environmental, and to help everyone with that, if you go to the next slide, we've come up with some mailboxes, and actually I'll show that slide in a minute, but I just want to talk about the the reviews that come in. So if you are a lender that you're self-certifying the environmental, and you've certified it's clean, then you're going to self-certify that in E-Tran. If you send the review into us, what we're seeing in some reviews is that it's not containing all of the information that we need. One of the reasons that you would send it to us, or really the reason you would send it to us, is that the property has contamination, but it meets some of the mitigating factors that we've put in the SOP that allows a lender to move forward and make a loan on a property that potentially has contamination, right? So if the property is contaminated, normally we wouldn't allow you to make that loan, but we have come up with a number of mitigating factors. And in most cases, if you are relying on one of those mitigating factors, that's why you're coming to us and saying, I know this has contamination, but here's how it meets the mitigating factor. The problem we're seeing is that we're not seeing the write-up that the lender is submitting to us for review with the proper documentation needed to outline what those mitigating factors are. So it's really important that you follow the SOP. This term E5 write-up is a write-up that's required when you want to move forward on a loan that has contamination. And we're finding reviews that are coming in to us that are not delineating those mitigating factors in that write-up correctly. So that's one of the things that we want to kind of make sure that you're aware of, that you're following the SOP guidance when it comes to that. Can we go to the next slide? And again, if you are submitting those properties to us, we've asked you to kind of put it in a format that makes it a lot easier. We've established a new mailbox, environmental reviews at SBA.gov, and we're asking you, when you submit that report, that you outline it in the subject line with the district office, the loan number, the loan name, and this way it makes it a lot easier for us to sort out these reviews as they're coming into one box, and we're sorting them out to the different areas. And we have a cadre of environmental attorneys that are looking at these things. So it's much easier for us. And there's an example there, the San Francisco district office. It gives you the loan number and the loan name. So it helps us identify where it needs to go, which will move the process a lot faster. One of the other things we're asking is that when you submit that review, we're asking you not to include the environmental documentation. That should be loaded into E-Tran, and then we will use that email that you send us to go into E-Tran and to review the documentation. We're asking also that when you upload your environmental reports into E-Tran, that you label them, because that'll make it a lot easier for us to find it. So if for instance, if it's a phase 1 and a phase 2, that you're labeling, the phase 1, the phase 2, the reliance letter, or any other attachments that are part of your environmental review. This way it allows us to more quickly find what we're looking for and hopefully move that review along. So when you're doing that, we're asking you to follow that process. Next slide. These are the environmental inboxes that we have, just to go through what each one is for. The environmental questions, we've established an environmental questions box that we will answer questions on. We ask that you provide a specific fact pattern type question in there, as opposed to just a general question. It's really hard in the environmental world to answer a general question because everything is fact-based. So we're asking you that if you have a question that you want us to look at, that it be very fact-driven to a specific situation. We have a team of 4 of us that monitor that box, and we meet twice weekly to go through those questions. So we try to stay up on them as much as we can. We met this morning and we pretty much cleared the box out. So we do that twice a week to process those questions. And then there's the environmental reviews box, which I just talked about. That is when you are asking us to do a review. And again, we're asking you not to attach the documents to it, just send us a review with the information and we'll go into E-Tran and we'll get it. And then there's the environmental appeals at SBA.gov, and that box has existed for a number of years. That box is used for appeals. So that would be a situation where if you got a review back from a district council and you didn't think the review was correct on an environmental review that you submitted, you could send that to appeals and we would take a look at it. It's also a situation where you're asking for an exception to policy, you can send those exceptions in there to us. And also for one of our mitigating factors called other factors, and that's one where it doesn't meet one of the mitigating factors that we've addressed. And as a result, you basically are asking us to look at a number of different facts in making a determination as to whether or not you can move forward. So those are the three places, or the three things that we look at for appeals. That box has existed, and we're asking you not to copy all the boxes with one issue. It's much easier if you divide it into the correct space. Next slide. And I just wanted to throw out the mitigating factors just to kind of refresh everyone's memory. So these are the ones that you would use if you were coming to us and saying the property has contamination, but we think it meets one of these. And we're just asking you to follow the SOP. We lay out what is required for each one of those mitigating factors. So it's really important that you follow those when you're submitting the review. And I think that's it. So I will turn it back over to Bob.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Before we move on, Steve, there's a number of questions.
I figured there would be.
All right, thanks. Bob, go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Ginger. Thanks for answering those questions on the Q&A, Steve. All right. Next up, we have the Commercial Loan Servicing Center with Joel Steiner as a director, and he will introduce his team. Go ahead, Joel.
Thank you. Well, all I can say is a lot has happened since we last met. The centers that you knew as the Little Rock Commercial Loan Service Center or the Fresno Commercial Loan Service Center have been merged into just one center, the Commercial Loan Service Center, with finance, legal, and support professionals located in Little Rock, Fresno, and other communities around the country. As Assistant Center Director for 504 Liquidation, Gary Wamhoff says, Joel, we've meshed the two centers and the meshing process has gone smoothly. Over about a 10-week period, starting in April, the Little Rock and Fresno leadership teams worked closely with our superiors and headquarters, strategizing ways to prioritize workforce optimization to ensure the center is operating with maximum efficiency. It is true that some of the cards we have been dealt were outside of our control. In that regard, I can tell you that I have a whole new appreciation for the deep meaning and the significance of the serenity prayer. You know, the one that says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. I've discovered I'm not as wise as I would like to be. As to those things within our control, our efforts were made significantly easier given the outstanding professionalism and leadership of former Center Director in Little Rock, Nikki Carrington, and the team she led. Nikki ran a tight ship, and while Fresno and Little Rock never claimed to be mirror images, Nikki led her operation in close alignment with the rules that we are all expected to follow. She had a keen eye for what we called the calibration of the two centers in alignment with the direction and vision headquarters has for us. A direction and vision, as you know, that can change from one administration to the next. Nikki is going to be greatly missed, both professionally and personally. While Gary's initial assessment that the mesh seems to be going smoothly, I remind the leadership team located now in both Little Rock and Fresno, and I suggest to all of you on this call today that we will encounter, I am sure, some bumps in the road. Working together, however, I'm confident that we can get to that point, perhaps only months from now, where we can say, wherever located, you know, I liked it when there were two centers, but this works too. Some might suggest that we are not setting the bar high enough, but I would suggest otherwise. Now think about it for just a moment. We are combining into one commercial loan service center what was once two separate centers, servicing a huge government guaranteed loan portfolio valued at about $50 billion in each center and numbering close to 250,000 loans in each center. And I'm not counting the PPP product. Add to that the fact that each center had its own computerized tracking system, reporting system, email contacts, and culture of excellence. We would not be where we are today if it were not for the strong leadership and support of headquarters. And I especially want to give a shout out to Scott Murawski, who served as the program manager for this endeavor. Can we pull up the next slide, please? What can you expect moving forward? Well, one thing that has not changed is that you are going to continue to get to work with people you already know, whichever center you previously worked with. We will continue to endeavor to complete loan actions within well-established timeframes found within agency rules and regulations. Substantive loan actions requiring SBA approval within 15 business days. Express purchases within 45 business days. 504 liquidations within 1 year. Collateral releases in connection with paid in full debentures within 1 month. What else can you expect? In addition to the professional relationships you have already formed, you can expect to meet new team members. Those serving at the Commercial Loan Service Center have, by dint of professional experience, more expertise in servicing, purchasing, and liquidating a government-guaranteed portfolio of complex commercial loans than any other group that I can think of. Now I would like to introduce you to some of the members of the CLSC leadership team. The first is Assistant Center Director for 504 and 7A Loan Servicing, John Gossett. John?
Joel, thank you very much. Let me give you just a quick update on myself. Myself and another gentleman had reopened an SBA department at a small community bank. So I've done everything SBA within a bank. I have 1502 reporting, all that kind of stuff. I started out in the banking industry when I was in college. So I've done a lot of different things. Best thing I learned was in that banking side and as a bank teller was how to balance. So what does that mean? Time is very important. And right now, I'm looking at how much time we have left here. So I'm going to make this pretty quick. If you could just run to the next slide. What I want to do, though, is talk about what's the most important thing, and go to the next slide here. What's the most important thing in servicing right now? Okay. Well, we're going to submit a request to the SBA. Before I submit that request, I want to make sure that I read my 7A matrix. And I'm kind of burning through stuff because of time here. So why do I want to go to my 7A matrix? It's going to tell me a couple of things. Number one, it tells me, is there something I can do without SBA approval, or does it require SBA approval? All right, so I'm going to review that first. Now my next question that I'm going to look at is, has this loan been fully dispersed, or is it undispersed or not fully dispersed? Why? That's going to tell me where I submit my request. And remember, time is very valuable right now. So if I've got an undispersed loan or not fully dispersed, and I have a loan modification I'm submitting, that's going to go to 7A Loan Mod. It's not going to come to Fresno or the Commercial Loan Service Center. It will need to go to Sacramento, 7A Loan Mod. Now, why is that important? If you're sending it to Fresno, we're going to turn around and forward that on to Sacramento. You may not get any response from us saying it's approved because that is in the jurisdiction of Sacramento. So where do I find if this loan is dispersed or not? I'm going to look in eTrend under my loan status column at the top of the page, and if it shows undispersed, I'm going to send it to Sacramento. I'm also going to look in my system. Have I dispersed funds? Because remember, if it's fully dispersed, it comes to Fresno or the Commercial Loan Service Center. If it's not fully dispersed, it'll go over to Sacramento. So I'm going to look at my 1502 reporting. Have I dispersed funds? Okay. So, by the way, if I have a line of credit and I've made one disbursement, it doesn't matter how much it is, it's considered fully dispersed. All right. Now, why is this stuff important? Once again, Time is of the essence, okay? My next question I'm going to ask before I submit my request is, has this loan been sold on the secondary market? Now, why is that? If it's sold on the secondary market, there are items which require secondary market approval. It could be a unilateral action, but it could require secondary market approval, FTA approval. That's where I'm going to want to send it. If it has not been sold on the secondary market, then I'm good. There's things I could do. I don't need to worry about the FTA. All right. So I've got a loan. It's been sold on the secondary market. I've reviewed my 7A matrix, and my 7A matrix says that my interest rate, change in my interest rate, is a unilateral action. But I read the footnote, always read the footnotes, and that footnote says if the loan has been sold on the secondary market, you need FTA approval. So it's a unilateral action, but I got to go to the FTA because I've sold it on the secondary market. All right. Now, if it touches the note, repayment, rate, terms, it goes to the FTA. If you're talking about collateral obligors, doesn't touch the note, and the loan has been sold on the secondary market, it doesn't go to the FTA. It's going to then, if it comes to Fresno, it comes to Fresno. If it's a unilateral action, you may not even need to notify us. So what does SBA require, right? I'm looking at my 7A matrix. What does it say? Well, is it a unilateral action or does it require our approval? An example would be release of an obligor that requires SBA approval. All right. But what about something like an increase to the loan? We always want to make sure that we're reading the entire 7A matrix. I've got a loan that's fully dispersed. I drop down and it says increase requires SBA approval. But wait, we need to read the whole thing. That increase, if the loan was approved non-delegated through the SBA, then it would require SBA approval. If that increase was approved delegated authority, it's a unilateral action. And I review my matrix, and what does it say? It says use ETRAN or ETRAN required. I go into ETRAN, I do the increase in ETRAN. I need to make sure I'm documenting my file. All right, I'm going to review my SOP 5057 3.1, and I'm going to be looking at those pages. Most of what we're doing in 7 is in Chapter 8. But if I'm looking at loan modifications, interest rates, I think that's Chapter 7. Chapter 6 is the chapter that tells us, hey, does it debt service? And what does your collateral look like? Okay, so I'm going to just kind of start moving on here. And you can go ahead and change that slide. I'm going to jump into that real fast at the end. I just want to make sure I address these things due to time, okay? Now, if I've got a loan and it's a unilateral action, I'm going to look, does my matrix say notify the center? Let's say it says notify the center. Okay, I'm going to notify the center. I am not going to wait for a response from the center. It's a unilateral action. I'm documenting my file. I send an email off. I upload something into Box or ETRAN. I say, here's what I've done. I'm doing it. I'm documenting my file. I'm not waiting for a response. Now, if it says no notification required, I don't need to notify the center. I've got lenders that send me stuff and they actually say, I know I'm not supposed to notify you or I don't need to notify you, but I'm going to notify you anyways. Okay. If you're going to do that, that's fine, but don't wait for a reply. Document your file. Review your 7A matrix. Does it require SBA approval? Submit for approval. If it doesn't require SBA approval, does it require ETRAN? ETRAN required, then I go into ETRAN and I make my change, as in maybe an increase. If it says notify the center, I'm going to notify the center. If it says no notification required, I'm not going to notify the center. I'm documenting my file and I'm not waiting for the response. Now, SBA approval, I need to wait for SBA's approval or decline. Okay. Now, time is of the essence here. So I'm going to submit something, and there's a couple of ways to submit it. And we have Box and we have ETRAN. Now that's the slides we've looked at right here. I can upload it directly into ETRAN, just like I do at origination. There's a documents button. I click on the documents button. What is important to know about that? I need to name that file appropriately and send an email that says I've uploaded into ETRAN. In that email, a loan number that we can find that it's been uploaded. If I'm using Box, it's very important to submit an outline. Both ETRAN and Box submit an outline that explains what's happening. We got one in the other day. It's a credit memo. That's all it is a credit memo. And there's no contact information for the bank. So we read through the 40 pages, it was 40 plus pages. We read through the 40 plus pages. We realize what it is. It's unilateral action. And lo and behold, there is a contact information on that credit memo. It's for the borrower. So make sure you're putting your contact information in what you upload into Box and into eTran. The next thing that's important in Box, when you're submitting several PDFs, make sure you put the same loan number, that loan number in each PDF. Makes it easier for us to find. They all come into one area. There is a way to designate, is this a subordination? Is this a release? Other, that kind of thing. But everybody that's doing it, they all go into the same box. And then we've got to go through and delineate which PDF goes to which loan. So if you put the loan number in each one of your PDFs, it makes it so much easier. Now, I'm looking at my time and I'm burning through time here real fast. So I just want to leave you guys with that. How do I make things my time more efficient? Read my 7A matrix for all my servicing actions, review it, submit it the way the matrix tells me, document my file, and if it's a unilateral action, use eTran, notify the center, or no notification required. And when it's a unilateral action, I'm not going to wait for SBA response. I'm going to submit it, but I'm always going to read my footnotes at the end. And with that, let me turn that back over to you, Joel.
Thank you, John. Next, I'd like to introduce Assistant Center Director for Express Purchases, Sal Del Campo. You know, the center started purchasing loans in 1999, the old Fast Track loan product, and today we're purchasing the Express loan product. We continue to. Sal?
Thank you, Joel. Can we please advance the slide to guarantee purchase, please? All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sal Del Campo, and I am the supervisor for the purchasing department of the Commercial Loan Servicing Center. Our main function is honoring of the guarantee. So what I'd like to do today is just give you a brief overview of our department, provide some helpful hints on guarantee purchase. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I've included our main email address here, fsc.expresspurchases@sba.gov. So this is going to be our preferred method of communication. Now, when you do expect an auto reply. So this auto reply is going to serve two purposes. Number one, it's going to provide some helpful information. And number two, it's going to let you know that we did receive your email. I've also included the information, the loan officers of our department. Now, if you do submit a request for guarantee purchase, if there's anything missing or additional clarification is required, do expect an email from one of these individuals. Now, I've also included my contact info as well. Now, I do want to emphasize that if you ever want to bring anything to my attention, if you have a comment, you have a concern, anything of that nature, please do not hesitate to reach out. Next slide, please. Now, our office, we purchase 4 categories of loans. The first being SBA Express, Export Express, Community Advantage, and the pilot program loans, irrespective of the borrower's geographic location. Now, I do want to make just a quick comment regarding secondary market purchases. Our office doesn't do any secondary market purchases. Therefore, if you have one of these types of loans and it was sold in the secondary market and you'd like to request that SBA repurchase it, here's the path it's going to take. You're going to send your secondary market purchase request directly to the Herndon office, the National Guarantee Purchase Center. Now, once that secondary market purchase has been approved, we're still going to review the post-purchase package, so you will submit the UPP directly to our office. Next slide, please. Now, I do just want to make a couple of comments regarding the UPP itself. And, the most important thing is that when you're getting ready to prepare a UPP, do download the version off of our website rather than keep a copy saved on your desktop. And the reason for that is simply that the UPP is updated periodically. So if you use the version that's on our website, it's going to help ensure that you have the most up-to-date version. And by the way, the most recent version was just released May of this year. just over a couple of months old. So if you happen to have a copy on your desktop and it was downloaded prior to May 1st, you likely have an outdated version. Next slide, please. All right, now in terms of submitting a UPP to us, so you have three options. Number one, you can always email it to us, fsc.expresspurchases@sba.gov. Second option is going to be upload via eTran, via the Documents button. Now, I do want to emphasize that if you do upload a UPP using eTran, we are going to need an email notification. Now, the reason for that is eTran doesn't notify us when something has been uploaded. Therefore, if you don't send us an email, we're just simply not going to know that it's there. Third option is using Box.com. Now, with Box.com, they actually do send us an email every time something has been uploaded. Therefore, if you use Box.com, a separate email is not going to be required. And also, we do monitor the box daily. Next slide, please. Okay, and I just want to close with just some helpful hints regarding UPP submissions. And, the goal here is just simply to avoid any unnecessary delays and help us get to a decision as soon as possible. So, number one, do place all of the items under the appropriate tab. Just as an example, tab 3 would require the transcript. Tab 8, as an example, would require collateral information. And when you place things under the correct tab, it just provides for a smoother review process. Next, the UPP should be in one single file rather than multiple files. Occasionally we do receive a UPP where everything is in a different file. As an example, we may have a note in one file, we'll have the guarantees in another, so on and so forth. And by the time the entire UPP is uploaded, we can have dozens of files. So in the event that this does happen, do expect an email from us. We will be requesting that those files be combined into one. Next is do ensure that each item noted in the tabs is provided. If anything is missing, do expect a delay. We're going to have to stop the review and reach out for additional information. Next is do ensure all documents contain the necessary signatures. One item that's frequently missed is a transcript of account. Please note that all transcript of accounts must be certified via lender signature. And then finally, do provide a detailed loan summary in tab 2. So this is the section where you should explain any actions taken during the servicing, collection, and liquidation. If anything is missing, this is where you want to explain it. Essentially, anything out of the ordinary should be explained here. So with that, that's going to conclude guarantee purchases. I'll turn it over back to you, Joel.
Thank you very much. Can you move to the next slide, please? Next, allow me to introduce Assistant Center Director for CAVERS Operations, Anna Sadler. Anna?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for bearing with us. So I'm going to try to make this as brief as possible. I understand everyone's already been online for quite some time. From this slide, I would just like to point out my contact information. If you have any problems within the CAVERS system, either gaining access or getting a response to an inquiry, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Next slide, please. Basic overview of CAVERS. You can consider CAVERS similar to a credit report, but one that is limited to only issues related to federally backed funding. The Credit Alert Verification Reporting System is used to identify defaulted federal debtors. It's used by federal agencies and their lenders to verify eligibility. This system can be cleared of an SBA debt, usually only by payment in full of that associated prior loss or defaulted debt. There is an exception to this rule, that is the COVID EIDL program. Those loans may be removed from the CAVERS system in certain circumstances if brought current. Because that loan program is an exception to the general rule for CAVERS reporting, those inquiries are handled exclusively by the COVID EIDL Servicing Center. We're more than happy to continue to accept your inquiries into that system and on those loans, but we will probably redirect you if you have an inquiry related to that particular program. Next slide, please. As a lender, if you need access to the CAVERS system in order to run your own searches, that process, gaining access, is very simple. You'll go to the website I have listed on this slide. Be sure that you're selecting registration for a lender user ID as opposed to a government user ID that is intended for SBA employees only. Once you've completed that form, you simply select send application, and one of us will be in touch with you shortly to let you know that we've received the application and moved you forward in that process. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to reach out. Next slide, please. In order to submit a CAVERS inquiry, you can save a lot of time for yourself and for us and for your borrower if you make sure that you have what you need to get started. First of all, you need authorization from the SBA borrower or guarantor involved for us to release information to you directly. You can always ask your applicant or borrower to reach out to us on their own if you would rather avoid that step. The next thing that you need, and really the primary thing, is either the CAVERS case number. This should be listed on any report that you get from the CAVERS system, or the SBA loan number if your borrower is already familiar with the issue involved. You can submit these inquiries either by email or phone. I've listed those both of those points of contact on this slide. And again, if you have any issues, please feel free to reach out. Next slide, please. With that, I will hand it back over to Joel. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you, Anna. Next, let me introduce you to Assistant Center Director for Post-Servicing Actions and Records Management, Christine Puangcao. Christine?
Thank you, Joel. Good afternoon. My name is Christine Puangcao, and I lead the Post-Servicing Actions Department at the Commercial Loan Servicing Center. Next slide, please. In the PSA department, we have 2 email addresses where you can submit your request and/or your inquiries. For your general post-servicing charged-off inquiries or submissions, please contact fsc.postservicing@sba.gov. For your loans that were purchased without charge-off, please send those inquiries and your resolution submissions to fsc.sar@sba.gov. These submissions would be your charge-off tabs with your CPC tabs, if you have any, your extensions, your request to return a loan back to regular servicing, or your paid in full resolutions. Just a quick reminder here on this slide is that per the new intake process outlined in the beginning of this presentation, the CLSC will handle loans under those listed programs. One minor important change is that the National Guaranty Purchase Center will be handling all semi-annual reportings regardless of the loan program. Next slide, please. Just a quick breakdown of what happens after a loan is charged off. So after a loan is charged off, a 60-day due process notice is sent to all liable parties. If they do not respond to this letter, Treasury will then activate collection efforts. Once Treasury starts their collection efforts, SBA and the lender can no longer service the loan. The borrower must then be directed to Treasury to discuss the repayment and settlement options. Once again, Treasury's number is 1-888-826-3127. Next slide, please. There are 2 important reminders for when Treasury is actively servicing a loan. SBA cannot quote a balance using E-Tran figures because E-Tran does not include Treasury servicing fees. In addition, SBA and the lender cannot accept any payments from the borrower because when payments come in while in the status of charge-off and active at Treasury, Treasury must take a fee. When SBA and or the lender accepts payment, this causes an accounting nightmare that we all want to avoid at all costs. So please route the borrowers to contact Treasury to make their payments. After all, Treasury is the debt servicer at this point. If you have any questions on the loan, or if you have any, or if you just want to know the status of a Treasury referral on a loan, please email our department at fsc.postservicing@sba.gov. Lastly, thank you so much for all the hard work you do to assist our small business borrowers. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, Christine.Puangcao@sba.gov. Joel, back to you.
Thank you, Christine. Finally, let me introduce to you Deputy Center Director Michelle Serrano. Michelle?
Hi, Joel. Thank you very much. Just a quick just to tell everybody, hi again, I'm Michelle Serrano, Deputy Center Director, and I'm just here to help support whenever you need assistance. So never hesitate to reach out to me, michelle.serrano@sba.gov, and I'll be more than happy to assist you. Thank you so very much. I'm looking forward to working with those that I've never worked before. Thank you so much, Joel. Back to you.
Thank you, Michelle. Can we bring up the slide with the photos on it? Thank you. Now, I have a favor to ask of all of you. If you ever encounter an issue or have a question, a comment, or a concern, or if you have an idea for training targeted to your lending institution or district office for our district office friends on this call, would you let any one of our assistant center directors know? If they're not able to give you the answer you think you deserve, then let their supervisor, Deputy Center Director Michelle Serrano, know. And then there's me. I want to hear from you, especially I'm interested when you feel that we might be missing the mark. Our email addresses and our photos are included in our slide deck, along with a helpful list of email addresses. We'd like to have the first shot in resolving whatever issue is on your mind. Well, everyone has a boss, and so do I. So if the CLSC leadership team is not able to address your issue, my boss, Marty Andrews, would like to know. I see where I did not include his email address in this slide deck. It was probably subliminal, so let me just give it to you right now. You can reach Marty at martin.andrews@sba.gov. I'm told that Plato once said, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a harder battle." You know, we really are looking forward to getting to know you better and to support the vital work that you are doing every day, perhaps with a lender or at one of our SBA district offices or in one of SBA's program offices in headquarters. As together, we strive to build a better America, one SBA loan at a time. Thank you, and I will now turn the mic back to our host.
All right, thank you, Joel, and the Commercial Loan Servicing Center team. You guys did a great job letting us know exactly what you guys do. I know it was an abbreviated lineup and presentation, but we were running a little long and we got to cut it a little short. I think we're running 17 minutes past already, so we're going to wind this up. And if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A and we'll continue to respond to them. Thank you for attending, and we'll see you in the October call. Thanks a lot.